We're still kind of staying with the coronavirus. Looking right now, I think of a plane with about 200 Americans that were.
There are 3 new confirmed cases of the Wuhan coronavirus in Singapore as of 2 p.m. today, bringing the total to 13. All 3 are women from Wuhan, and they are in stable condition. They're currently warded at the National Center for Infectious Diseases, and the Health Ministry says that there is no evidence of community spread so far. Now, as of noon today, 164 suspect cases have been tested negative for the infection. Test results for the remaining 49 are pending. Now, as for contact tracing, the Health Ministry has identified 170 close contacts. Of the 139 still in Singapore, 135 have been contacted and they are being quarantined or isolated. Efforts are ongoing to contact the remaining 4. The 11th case is a 31-year-old who was a traveling companion of the 4th confirmed case. She'd been quarantined from Sunday and developed symptoms the following day. The 12th case is a 37-year-old. She arrived in Singapore last week and developed symptoms on Sunday. She took a taxi to Tan Tock Seng Hospital yesterday and was classified as a suspect case before subsequent tests confirmed the infection. Now, prior to hospital admission, she stayed at hotels in Sentosa and Geylang. Now, the 13th case is a 73-year-old who arrived in Singapore on the 21st of January. She was tested positive for the coronavirus today at about 2 p.m.
For a look at what's making headlines around the world, we're going to head over to London and check in with Gwen Baumgartner. And we're still kind of staying with the coronavirus, Gwen. I think a plane with about 200 Americans that were evacuated from Wuhan, but it's a little bit tougher for British citizens.
It is. Good morning, Anne-Marie. The evacuation of 200 British nationals has been delayed as the deadly coronavirus continues to bring thousands of travelers to a standstill. A British government evacuation flight was due to take off today, but was delayed at the last minute because the relevant paperwork permitting some passengers to fly was not granted in time by Chinese authorities. Passengers with dual British and Chinese nationality have been prevented from flying because the Chinese government does not recognize dual nationality. Britain's Foreign Office says they're working all hours to reschedule the flights as soon as possible. On their return, they'll be quarantined for 2 weeks. Now to Japan, where an arrest warrant has been issued for former Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn. Ghosn is currently living as a fugitive in Lebanon after he sensationally fled the country while awaiting trial in Tokyo for financial fraud. Japanese prosecutors say his disappearing act broke the law and they want him returned to the country immediately. However, Lebanon does not have an extradition treaty with Japan, so it's unlikely today's warrant will lead to his arrest. And finally, here in London, where Britain's official exit from the European Union is just 1 day away. After more than 3.5 years of negotiations, extensions, and divisiveness, the UK and the EU are finally parting ways. Yesterday, members of the European Parliament said their farewells to the UK and their British colleagues with an emotional rendition of Auld Lang Syne. Lawmakers stood holding hands and waving scarves aloft that read, "Always united." Now, despite years of tension over the divorce deal, the withdrawal agreement has now been agreed by both sides. The UK's 47-year membership of the EU will now end tomorrow night at 11 local time. Anne-Marie.
But they still have like 11 months before it's sort of a full departure, right?
They do, yes. So there's still a lot to work out. But as of tomorrow at 11 p.m., there's no turning back. There's no second referendum. And finally, we're really kind of pushing forward with Brexit.
Yeah. I know. It was very touching goodbye. Let's see if all those warm emotions are still there when they start to renegotiate all those trade deals that they're going to have to do. Gwen.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
3 teachers from a Palm Beach Garden school may have been exposed to coronavirus. The group from the Benjamin School was on a 4-day conference trip to Yale University last weekend. The Palm Beach Post reports for now they are confined to their homes and expect test results back by the end of this week. Coronavirus has garnered headlines across the world as more states confirm cases that are being tested. So far, China has reported 170 deaths and at least 7,700 people infected. I'm Ken Molestina for CBS.
Welcome to CBS This Morning. As you wake up in the West, we have breaking news for you on the coronavirus outbreak. You are looking right now at the Costa Smeralda. That's an Italian cruise ship docked just north of Rome. Around 6,000 passengers, 114 of them Americans, are now being held on board this morning because of fears that a passenger from China has coronavirus.
Italian media reported a short time ago that preliminary tests found no signs of the potentially deadly illness, but samples are being sent for further testing. Carter Evans is at an Air Reserve base near Los Angeles, where nearly 200 Americans who were evacuated from Wuhan, the epicenter of the deadly outbreak, landed yesterday. Carter, what do we know about possible coronavirus patients on that ship?
The passenger in question arrived in Italy from Hong Kong last week and boarded the Costa Smeralda. Now health officials are trying to determine if the 54-year-old woman has the flu or the coronavirus.
Video obtained by CBS News from on board the Costa Smeralda shows passengers patiently waiting for results on whether a fellow traveler has been infected with the deadly coronavirus. Health officials say a Chinese national on board came down with a fever and started experiencing breathing problems. Before docking back in Italy, the ship visited one port in France and two in Spain. It's not clear whether health officials are concerned about the transmission of the virus there. Passenger Mike Luigi.
It's pretty normal on board. I mean, we can just move around. We don't have to stay in our cabin.
To celebrate the Lunar New Year, millions of Chinese nationals are traveling throughout the globe. Luigi estimates that 1 in 7 passengers on the cruise ship come from China.
And I'm not stressed, and I don't see any person stressed. Just like, okay, we wait and see what happens. The communication is good.
Back in Southern California, a group of nearly 200 evacuees from China are being monitored for the disease.
Did you have any high-risk individuals on the flight?
There were no individuals that responded to the questions indicating that they were high risk. We're reassessing that now.
The CDC's reassessment includes nasal swabs and blood tests, but some Americans were left behind in Wuhan and remain fearful.
She told me that they got through several of the screenings, got their tickets, got through the medical check, and then I got a message that said it's a no-go.
James Dickey's ex-wife and 8-year-old daughter were told they were bound for the U.S. on the only flight out of Wuhan. But because his daughter didn't have her passport, they were denied entry at the last minute.
I just felt so defeated at that point, and it sort of felt like both countries had let me down. How's a father supposed to feel when his daughter's in harm's way?
The Red Cross is standing by in case any cruise ship passengers need to be transferred to the hospital.
¡Un tornado! ¡Ay, ay, ay! ¡Boludo, un tornado, men! ¡No! ¡Ella está viniendo! ¡Boludo, boludo! ¡Ojalá que boludo! ¡Victoria! ¡Victoria!
banderina. Mira, mira cómo echó la casa. Tira. Pobre. Hija de
Canaveral in Florida as SpaceX attempts to launch 60 satellites into orbit. It's part of its effort to create its Starlink global internet service. These are live pictures right here. Two previous launch attempts this week had to be scrubbed due to weather conditions, Suzanne.
That's right. They previously launched about 60 satellites at a time in May, and then November and January